looking at two words. One word is called deride. What is deride? What does it mean to deride someone?
Shun them.
Not shun.
Critique.
No, not critique.
It's something like that.
It is mocking. It is mocking. So guys, I'm coming by now taking your temperature because I know I did not do it earlier. All right.
Thank you. I already took it.
You're good. And I'm sorry I was out a whole lot. I don't drink coffee when I start class.
Well, get up now, we can go.
I need to eat.
You're right.
Hey,
You're the one student.
I got corona in the span of 5 hours.
Wait, so did the ride work for today or? is it-
The ride is censure. No, remember she said that that was going to the day, like just moved it today.
Or I can, oh, even better. Oh, I can.
That's why when you do really
I can.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, deride is to mock. What does censure mean? Censure.
Do the same hairstyle.
That's like the criticize.
To criticize sharply. Okay, so guys, which of the two, if someone is derided, have they necessarily done anything to deserve that? No.
So,
If someone's being censured, they probably have what, done something
yes.
that's not just right, so they're getting criticized sharply. You see the difference? Okay, good. You also have later the word job, which is also similar to mock and jeer. Okay, so let's read our sentences. And Logan has written one. Very good. That's perfect. They love to mock. All right, Jacob. Coaches have to deride their players so they get better. All right. All right, so deride. And so they do mock. They do. I guess that's.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
your writing is mocking?
It is.
Censure, boy.
So censure might be. So I don't know that a coach would mock or make fun of. They shouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't think they would do that. All right, so Jonah.
The bully derided the boy because he had a hole in his shirt.
Okay. And Brennan writes, when the cat took off my dog. Okay, let's see. No. All right, so we again, we want to make it like deride is something that, I don't know, I think dogs can mock each other. I mean, I think mine antagonize each other all the time, but we probably typically want to make it for humans. So it means to mock or make fun of. So what can we say? When the cat took off,
Yeah, I know.
what did she mean? My. When the cat took off, my sister derided the way I ran after it. Oh, you know what I meant. The way. There we go. How about that? All right. When the mother, okay, Jaded, I'm so sorry. I'm reading your sentence. The mother derided the other kids' mothers. That can happen. Okay, Grant. Grant, you want to read yours?
Yeah, that's all right. Daniel always derided me every day.
Good. Okay, Daniel.
You can read it.
Critics derided the proposals as clumsy attempts to find a solution. Good. And Caden, the basketball player derides his opponents. And again, I would think that kind of behavior, what would that get you? It could get you what? If people were deriding each other on the court.
I get a foul.
Okay. So but it could happen. Okay, Braden. Perfect. Bullies deride. Hey guys, I don't have the kind of attention that we need to be studying the difference between deride and censure. So bullies do deride. That's what makes them happy. All right, Sierra writes, my old math teacher used to love to deride us. All right, well, not a good thing. Abigail writes, the bully began to deride the teacher behind her back. That can happen. And then Tyler, do you want to read yours, Tyler?
Always ride Robert when he makes mistakes.
Okay. And Robert, you gonna read yours?
I'll be watching you a lot because you think he's smarter than me.
Okay, no. Thinks he's smarter than I am. Then I am. Okay, no. All right, censure Logan.
Simon Cowell has always been censoring people like that.
Perfect example of censure. That is perfect. Simon Cowell, he doesn't just critique, he critiques how? Aggressively, sharply, yes. Okay, Jacob. Gordon Ramsay censures chefs. Good. Jonah?
The coach censures the players during halftime.
Perfect. Brennan writes, the mom censored her kid when she had an attitude. Perfect. Jaden writes, the teacher censored the student who was acting out. Braden? The parent censures their son for his actions. Good. Abigail writes, the priest censured the boy for his sins. Good. Sierra, my dad will censure us when we are hypocrites. Good. Tyler?
Coach has censored his players during.
Good. And Robert? Good. And Grant?
Everyone censored the criminal for his actions.
Good. And Caden? The coach censured the players at practice. This is good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. So guys, I got 3 people who haven't done their vocab yet. Are you waiting to do it, or are you just, what is it? 3 people haven't done their vocab yet. Zach's already told me. Guys, make sure you do it ASAP, okay? All right, now we're going to go ahead and go back to, you all need your Chromebook, and you need to go back to your journal. We will review before we start watching the second video today. So go ahead and open up your notes. We're going to classwork. We are going to journal. And you're opening up your notes from yesterday, dated 9/14. You'll need to go ahead and date 9/15 for the notes today. And who wants to share something that they wrote down for a note yesterday? Okay, yes. What do you have down?
This computer graphic.
Oops, sorry.
Beowulf was written,
Perfect. So that's when it was written. We're not for sure. We just know kind of time period. What else do we have? Right, yes.
Glory was a great motivation for
The Warriors.
Yeah, the Warriors.
Yes, and so do y'all remember they were bringing glory to whom?
For the king, for their ancestors, and for their tribe.
King, ancestors, tribe, and themselves, right? Very good. What else do y'all remember, or did you write down?
They were a patriarchal society.
They were patriarchal, which means what? That's right. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, as opposed to what? What's the opposite of patriarchal? Matriarchal, which means mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. Okay, good. What else?
It would also be based on kinship and fraternity.
Perfect. Kinship and fraternity. Which he defined kinship. Is it got to be people who are blood related to you in this meaning?
No.
Kin? Okay, what else did kinship involve?
Your friends.
What is it?
You're married. If you get married into like something,
Based upon status.
like brother-in-law, like that.
Okay, your kinship. What does fraternity mean?
Close social bonds among the men.
Close social bonds among the men. Okay, very good. What are some other things? What about weird? W-Y-R-D. What does weird mean?
Favorite.
Fate or destiny, which was important to these warriors because they fought hard, they lived hard, and they thought, hey, if it's my time to go, I'm giving it all I have. That's how they lived in everything, right? They weren't afraid. What about comitatus? Did you guys write comitatus down?
Yeah. The
So,
Germanic power arrangement in which the king is obligated to rule and what this consultation.
perfect. So a thing is simply a knight. They swear fidelity to the king, which means I will do whatever. I will always be faithful to the king. And the king says, I'll take care of you. Feeding, clothing, whatever, all you need. Protection, if you have it. All right. Okay. What else? Anybody else have something different we haven't said?
Pagan gods, Thor and
They worship pagan gods. That's right. That's where we have 6 to 7 days of the week comes from pagan gods. All right. Excellent. Anything else?
earliest form.
Yeah, that earliest form being.
Earliest form of English, or they call them the English, right? That's where we get our language. Hopefully it's going to make it a little more sense of why the English language is so difficult to learn. We have so many words, same meaning and things like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the video. Is everybody ready to take notes? I will emulate what I did yesterday. I will keep stopping and giving y'all time to write down the notes. 5 facts are not limited, but that's 5's a good number. Okay. Now, really quick, my virtual people. I just want to offer again virtual because we've got another couple of days of this. Not a couple of days, actually. We will watch possibly 2 today, and we just have 1 more. So if you want to watch with us, I'm leaving my video and recording going. Or if you're having any kind of trouble and you want to just, log off, just make sure in the chat or email me, let me know you're watching it. Okay. I'm not starting anything new after the video. We'll probably, like I said, get through 2 today. 2 at most, and it may just be 1 in a piece. So does anybody have any questions virtual at all?
No, but I've already watched all the videos and taken the notes and stuff, so.
Wow. Okay. So you are ahead. So I'll tell you what, we're going to the library Friday. Have you gotten an AR book yet? No. You may start looking in the library and seeing what you can check out through ebook. If you want to do that, okay?
Wait, do we do AR points? I didn't know y'all did that.
We are doing that we'll go to the library on, actually we might try to go Thursday and Friday. So we do. So that's something that you can also be doing. All right. Hey guys, listen. Shh, guys, listen. So tomorrow, Miss Little is coming in. Hey guys. Hey class. They can't hear me. Shh, if y'all will listen, Miss Little's coming in tomorrow. So I'm going to do my best to have the camera where she'll be. You can see her as well. So we're taking a little break tomorrow from the video and having her here. And then Thursday and Friday's library day. So just making sure y'all know what's going on. Anybody else have any questions? So Abigail, if I were you, I would just start looking on the library website, finding an ebook that I was interested in reading. Okay. Okay, guys, here we go.
Mr. Riggs, I have another question.
Yes.
It's not regarding this, but I don't know how to log into y'all's hack.
You don't know how to log into Hack. Okay.
Hey Sierra, I'll send you the email on the link on Snap, and it'll. You not know like your username and login, or do you not know how to physically get there?
I don't know my username and login. No one ever gave it to me.
Okay. So Zach, if you can help her as well, I'm going to put in the chat a couple of emails. If you will email these ladies at school, they can help you. Okay.
So your username is your email, and your password should be Westside1, and then it'll allow you to change it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, guys, let me know if you need more help. Okay, here we go. We ready? Okay, here we go.
This is lesson 2, the history of bailiff phone. Before we begin, I ask that you give the material the time and the attention that it deserves. I reserve the right to give you a pop quiz on any homework assignment, including this video podcast. You may also be held responsible for this material on more substantial assessments, such as essays, tests, and the semester exam. Please resist the temptation to multitask and close all of the programs on your computer except those that you might use for note-taking. For homework, take notes as you watch and listen, stopping the video and reviewing it as necessary. Be prepared to share your findings during class discussion and to apply what you've learned to your reading of the poem. Let's begin. We are going to start today with a reminder that Britannia had been part of the Roman Empire since the 1st century. When the empire falls in the 5th century, a host of Germanic tribes pour in across the eastern frontier. Most of these tribes go west across the continent, across the land, but 3 tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, go by sea, sailing from what is now Scandinavia and arriving on the eastern coast of Britannia in the middle of the 5th century. Over the course of the next 2 centuries, these 3 tribes fight each other and intermarry. Eventually, a number of major and minor kingdoms emerge. These kingdoms are independent, but their people also assume a collective identity, referring to their home as Angelon and to themselves
Okay,
as
this
English.
is a review from yesterday,
We know them
pretty much.
as the Anglo-Saxons. They and their culture would dominate the island until the middle of the 11th century.
Do I need to go back?
Beowulf is the story of a Germanic warrior who lives in Scandinavia in the 5th century. It was first told by the Anglo-Saxons sometime in the 8th century. It is worth noting that the story takes place in the same part of the world that the Anglo-Saxons' ancestors came from, and that it takes place at the same point in history as when those ancestors first began to migrate to the island of Britannia. Beowulf is very much a story told by immigrants about the land from which they came and the ancestors who lived there. Originally, Beowulf was an oral.
Okay, so I've been asked to go back, like a slide right here.
Warrior who lives in.
Guys, while we're paused just a moment, now these are due back. These are due back next Friday, all right? But go ahead and bring them as soon as you pick out your pose you want. They're all different poses. You put your name, guys, listen, your first and last name on this. The bottom of the picture has a number, a JPEG number. You put the number of the pose you want on the composite. That's all you have to do. If you want to buy more, you may, you don't have to. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, next Friday. Did everybody get a picture who had their composite made? Okay. Okay, so no. If you don't return them, Mr. Smith will just pick out what he thinks is best. How about that? It's your opportunity to pick one. What? Okay, just really quick.
Miss Riggs,
Yes.
I have a question. Okay, so when we go to find a book for like an ebook or an audio book or something, where do we go exactly? Do we need to go to
Sure. So let me, when you do that, you know where to get to our website, right?
Yes.
So we go to the school library. Guys, I'm taking just a really quick second off for just a minute, okay? Hold tight. Okay, now this is something Miss Parks is going to go over really more specifically with us Thursday and Friday. Miss Parks, our librarian. You would think it would be right here. Catalog. Okay, so maybe material type. Ebook. Here we go. Are you watching?
Yes.
Okay, ebook, and you can just put in like Hunger Games. And then I guess you add it to the list. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're so welcome. Okay, all right, guys. So we're back to the video. We ready to go?
Miss
Yeah.
Riggs,
Yes,
are we allowed to leave the meet to be able to do this
you
on our
are.
own?
You absolutely are. Five.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, guys, here we go. We ready? We are pushing play.
Scandinavia in the 5th century. It was first told by the Anglo-Saxons sometime in the 8th century. It is worth noting that the story takes place in the same part of the world that the Anglo-Saxons' ancestors came from, and that it takes place at the same point in history as when those ancestors first began to migrate to the island of Britannia. Beowulf is very much a story told by immigrants about the land from which they came and the ancestors who lived there. Originally, Beowulf was an oral poem, which means that it was told from memory and passed along from person to person, from tribe to tribe, and from generation to generation. It was told at social gatherings, dinners, and weddings, and parties, and other celebrations, and it was told by trained storytellers and ordinary people alike. Oral poetry is a form of vernacular art that is made by and for ordinary people as part of their everyday lives. Oral poetry uses simple, everyday language that anyone could understand, even when it's telling an extraordinary story. And this is exactly what the Beowulf poem is, an extraordinary story told by people in Anglo-Saxon society as part of their everyday lives.
If I ever pass, and you need to go back, just tell me. Guys, yes, and you actually have access to all these videos. They're on the classroom. They're on your Bible. Just this video 1, 2, 3, this video 2. But absolutely, I will do that for you as well. That's why one of my virtual students has already finished the video and made notes. I said, you might go along and check look for a book. Because that's the next thing you're doing.
Look for a book.
Look for a book. We're going to watch
I want to be honest with you. I have not read a book. Oh, man, dude.
You were on one.
I said I haven't missed the book. Why would you play with me?
I ready to try.
I read the book.
Are you good? I don't think we're ready yet.
I'm good.
That's a sweet picture.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
We're just making sure when we get that.
No biggie, no biggie.
Please show your pictures to your parents or guardians, maybe they,
No,
yeah,
some
they,
people
no, I
want to
don't want to see that kind of stuff. I want grandmas and all that. We want to see. But don't put everybody in the As we get going now, guys, everybody finished? That one's still typing.
Anyone could tell a story from memory, but some people were better at it than others. And the best storytellers of all were the Shopes, the Anglo-Saxon oral poets. Each tribe had a Shope, and the Shope was its entertainer and historian. He would recite his stories from memory, often accompanying himself with a lyre, which is a small stringed instrument similar to a harp. You will remember from the previous podcast that Anglo-Saxon society was a fraternal society, that there was a close bond between the warriors, that they lived together, they fought together, and they died together. If you look at the image on your screen, you will see that the Shope is illustrated in red, and he's standing amongst the men gathered around the fire. The king is on the far left, and he and the other warriors have their attention focused on the Shope. The Shope would tell stories of legends from the past and sing about the news of the present day, including battles and the deeds of members of the tribe. The Shope stories often had a moral component to them, offering models of good behavior to which the warriors could aspire, and offering models of bad behavior that they were to avoid. In this way, the Shope was instrumental in the creation of a fraternal bond among the members of the tribe.
Pause that, go back.
The members of the tribe.
So guys, the oral poetry just means they didn't have it written down, they had to memorize it, and they were reciting it from memory. Now, why would it be helpful to put that to rhythm?
That way you can easier to remember it better. Cause like a song.
That's exactly right, just like a song, we can remember words.
Get up, Bucky. No, not.
But guys, they were remembering many lines, hundreds of lines of poetry.
No, he did. He did.
That boy knows the rap song.
The rap.
I'm not raining on you.
You can't tell me you don't know it, bro.
I guarantee you.
She sees it, but I don't recite it.
I guarantee you. It's not a. It's like a.
Yeah, I feel like almost.
I never met him.
Oh, the clubhouse.
No.
So like, so you could stand up and be like,
Right, you have to
Are you gonna still typing? You didn't mean to move on?
Yes, we're ready, we're ready.
Oh, okay, well, let me just sit there, guys.
I was just.
It is important to understand that precisely because he could offer models of positive and negative behavior, unify the tribe, and immortalize the brave deeds of its members in stories that could be passed along from person to person, tribe to tribe, and generation to generation, the Shope enjoyed a position of immense power, prestige, and respect in Anglo-Saxon society. His ability with language, his skill with words, was considered as important as any warrior's skill with a sword, and just as manly. In the Beowulf poem, the Shope becomes a character in his own story, and we will see time and again that the story he tells is one of the power of language. Beowulf was an oral poem, which means that it was similar to a game of telephone.
okay, so you say that it was an oral poem, right?
Yes,
And there's most, it's kind of like a rumor, like
yes.
you gonna say it, but like it can get twisted up, so you don't know the actual story.
You're 100% right. That's what it's about to tell you. You caught that really fast. That's it. So guys, just like a translation, like, we read a lot of translations, and for stuff a little bit differently, but still, translations can be perceived differently. Well, certainly something that's oral that's not written down, definitely.
Each time that it was retold, it changed a little, and over time, it changed a lot. If you've ever played telephone as a kid, you know exactly how this works. You whisper something to a friend's ear, and then she whispers what she's heard into another friend's ear. That friend passes it along to another friend, and so on down the line, so that what the last person hears is only remotely similar to what you first said. The lesson that this children's game teaches us is that oral stories are susceptible to change, that as they are passed along from person to person, from generation to generation, and from place to place, the words change, meanings change, people mishear what was said, or they don't remember it entirely, or they introduce new words that were never there in the first place. And this is exactly what happens to the Beowulf poem, except that it's not just a classroom full of kids on a school day afternoon, but tens of thousands of people over the course of hundreds and hundreds of years. So that by the time that we get to the end of the first millennium, the Beowulf story as it is told differs significantly from the story that was first told in the middle of the 8th century. And that's the nature of oral poetry. It's one big game of telephone. And if we're going to think of Beowulf as a big game of telephone, we have to pay close attention to one particular development that was taking place in the island of Britannia as the game was being played. And that is the emergence of Christianity. As it turns out, this would have an immense impact on the Beowulf poem. In order to fully understand the Beowulf poem, we need to turn the clock back just a little bit to the beginning of the 4th century. It was then that the Roman Emperor Constantine issued a proclamation known as the Edict of Milan, which sought to promote religious tolerance throughout the empire. Now, the Edict of Milan was a general proclamation, but it was really meant for the Christians, who had been targets of persecution for over 2 centuries. Constantine himself was, for both personal and political reasons, increasingly sympathetic to Christianity, and he himself would eventually convert. The Edict of Milan had the effect of decriminalizing Christianity, and its implications were enormous. Over the next few centuries, Christianity would go from being a minor religion practiced in secret and fear to the most powerful and widespread religion that the continent had ever known. In the year 597, the Roman monk Augustine arrives on the island of Britannia. He's been sent there by Pope Gregory with the task of converting the pagan tribes, including the Anglo-Saxons, to Christianity. Now, there are 2 Augustines in history. The one that you've probably heard of is Augustine of Hippo. I think he gets some love in Western Civ and AP Europe. The Augustine that is sent to Britannia would become Augustine of Canterbury, the first Archbishop of Canterbury. They are 2 different guys living about 150 years apart, and you should do your best not to confuse them.
Okay, you guys want to stand on Stop it.
Stop.
Okay, I see some people typing. Guys, said I went too fast when you did the slides when you come back. It would, guys, it would be really nice today if we, go through our technology, just like the Google Classes, make it really got me pointed. Start after, actually, okay, Tuesday. Goodness. Well,
Well, it's almost. No, I'm gonna pause for 2 hours.
We've been doing a little pause.
we give you 1 hour.
Somebody be
I don't know if I'm taking it this way.
Is that okay with you, Shane? Are you nervous to-
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I can push play now, we're getting out.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Augustine arrives in 597, and his first prospect is an Anglo-Saxon king, King Ethelbert. Now, Ethelbert is the most powerful king in all of Anglo-Saxon Britain, and Augustine is able to convert him, perhaps because Ethelbert's wife, whose name is Bertha, was already a Christian. At any rate, when Ethelbert converts to Christianity, his subjects follow suit. Soon more Christian missionaries arrive, and as the word gets out that the most powerful king in Britain has converted to Christianity, more Anglo-Saxon kings and subjects do the same. Over the course of the next 4 centuries, Anglo-Saxon paganism and Christianity will come to coexist side by side on the island of Britannia.
Y'all think of this as Alan, if you think about it, if this was a town that was word of mouth, and you've got this commingling of paganism and Christianity, what do you think Bradwell's going to look like? It'll be a mixture of pagan and Christianity. That's exactly what it is. So you're going to have them, they're talking about, drinking, breaking on their, how they just slaughtered monsters. And then they're going to be praying to God, thanking God for their safe journey. Does that make sense?
That what makes it so it's like, it's never the same thing. It's always all over the place, but it's always changing.
That's true.
It's never.
That's right. And that's like languages. Language is always changing. You know that? And that frustrates a lot of people, how language is not, our subject, English is not like a lot. It's not where you can just always, and we do have grammar rules and usage, but, well, I mean, there's people argue on some parts of it, but also, I mean, people can see things differently in literature, and some people want to black, they want an answer, I want it to be right or wrong, and that's what I love about English, and some people can't stand that, Guys, are we going to push play? All right.
It is important to recognize that this process was a pretty complicated affair. The conversion to Christianity was rarely a clean break. Most converts continued to cling to the old ways, and others adopted only the aspects of Christianity that suited them. In some instances, a household might have one pagan spouse and one Christian spouse, and the children might be raised in both traditions. There was a lot of give and take, and most of it was messy, but one thing was clear. As the decades and the centuries wore on, more and more Anglo-Saxons were embracing Christian ways. So, as the pagan story of Beowulf is told and retold again, many of the people who were telling that story were also hearing and then telling and retelling another story, the story of Jesus Christ. Eventually, the story of Jesus becomes intertwined with the story of the Beowulf poem. And as you read the poem, you will find plenty of instances where a pagan character thanks to Christian God, or praises Jesus, or where the poet marvels at how lucky the pagan characters were to have Jesus in their lives, even if they didn't know that Jesus exists. This may seem contradictory in a lot of ways, and it is, but it makes perfect sense if you just remember that the Beowulf poem is one big game of telephone. So after 3 centuries of oral transmission, after 3 centuries of being told and retold again, and the countless changes that occurred during that process, the poem is finally written down by 2 Christian monks sometime in the late 10th or early 11th century. So who were these monks? We have no idea. How do we know that it was 2 monks? Easy. About halfway through the manuscript, the handwriting changes. It's not clear what happened to the first monk. Did he die? Did he get bored and move on to something else? Did he leave the monastery entirely? We don't know. What we do know is that he stops transcribing the poem about halfway through, at which point another guy comes in and finishes the job. Now you may ask yourself, did these 2 monks add Christian elements to the poem? We don't know for sure, but it certainly does seem likely. However, because the poem was told and retold by an increasingly Christianized population for nearly 300 years, it seems reasonable to assume that many of the Christian elements were inserted into the poem well before it reached the monks, and that anything that they might have added was simply icing on the cake. The Beowulf poem exists in this single manuscript. If it weren't for those 2 monks, we would not have the poem at all. And when the second monk finishes the manuscript sometime in the late 10th or early 11th century, it was completely forgotten about for nearly 600 years. In fact, there is no record of the poem's existence at all until the late 16th century, at which time it is part of a private library. The manuscript was transferred to another, presumably safer library, but when this second library burned to the ground in 1731, it suffered considerable damage. In 1751, it was moved again, this time to the British Museum, where it was considered of very limited interest until well into the 20th century. Indeed, when anybody thought of the Beowulf manuscript, and believe me, very few people did, it was as a decrepit historical artifact of a savage people that had disappeared from the face of the earth long ago. Toward the middle of the 20th century, the general indifference toward Beowulf and the view that it was merely a musty relic from a dead warrior culture began to change for 2 reasons. The first factor that encourages people to appreciate the poem's artistic merits is a lecture by a man named J.R.R. Tolkien, whom you might know as the author of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But Tolkien wrote those things for fun. He made his living as a professor of Anglo-Saxon poetry at Oxford. In the lecture, which was entitled Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics, Tolkien argued that Beowulf had rich characters and an intricate narrative structure and an exciting story to tell, that it wasn't just some random scrap of writing from a dark and distant past, but a compelling and complex work of art. Implicit in Tolkien's lecture was the idea that although Anglo-Saxon culture was a warrior culture, its people were a lot more artistically capable than most scholars thought. Tolkien's hypothesis that the Anglo-Saxons were capable of great art and that the Beowulf poem was an example of that great art was definitively supported just 3 years later in 1939 with the discovery of a burial ship, an Anglo-Saxon burial ship, at a place called Sutton Hoo in southeast England. Now, if you don't know what a burial ship is, listen closely, and I will tell you. In certain Germanic cultures, such as the Norse, the Anglo-Saxons, and the Vikings, when a king died, the people would take his body down to the sea and put it in a warship. And then they would fill the ship with treasure, with gold, and jewelry, and ceremonial war gear, shields and helmets and swords. And they would light the ship on fire, and they would set it out on the open sea towards the horizon, with the ship and the treasure and the king would be received by the gods. There are several variations of this practice, depending on the point in history and the exact geographic location of the tribe. But the most prominent variation involved taking the king's body, putting it in the warship, filling the ship with treasure, and then, rather than setting the ship on fire and sending it out to sea, burying the ship underground and building up the earth around it in what would come to be called a burial mound or a barrow. And this is exactly what happened to an Anglo-Saxon king in the late 6th or early 7th century. His barrow was part of a larger complex of burial mounds at Sutton Hoo that were excavated beginning in 1939. Upon opening the site, the archaeologists found that anything that was organic had almost completely decomposed. The hull of the ship, whatever else was made of wood, anything that was made of leather or wool or cotton, the king's body, all of these things completely or near completely disintegrated. In this computer graphic, you can see the impression that the hull made on the earth below it, a product of the sheer weight of the ship, which was 90 feet from tip to tail. Here is a photo of the archaeologists working at the site shortly after it was opened up in 1939. They're collecting the iron bolts that held the hull together. The bolts were badly rusted as the wood that surrounded them rotted away over the course of hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, although virtually everything that was organic had disintegrated, archaeologists were astonished to find that after over 12 centuries of burial, the one thing that had emerged from the site in perfect condition was the treasure. Here we see an Anglo-Saxon ceremonial war helmet, which had been placed near the king's head many hundreds of years before. What is immediately apparent is the extraordinary detail in the metalwork and the high degree of artistry involved in the overall production of the helmet. As one expert said, the level of craftsmanship of the treasures of Sutton Hoo exceeds anything of the sort to be found anywhere else in Europe. Here is a ceremonial sword, found next to where the body of the king had been. The leather scabbard is badly decayed, but the blade itself is as clean as the day that it was made. Notice the gold details on the butt of the handle. The level of craftsmanship is simply stunning. And while the king's body had long since returned to the earth and his clothing had rotted away, it was clear that he had been buried in ceremonial military dress. This is the buckle from the belt that he was wearing. Here too, the work is painstakingly intricate and the detailing is extraordinary. Not only were the treasures beautifully wrought, but they were exquisitely engineered as well. Here are the shoulder clasps that the king was wearing. They are made of gold and inlaid with precious stones. Here is one of the clasps moments after it was discovered at the site. This photo reveals each clasp to be made of two interlocking pieces in a pin, allowing it to sit properly on his shoulder and to attach to his clothing below. Around the king's waist was a leather bag containing gold coins, a ceremonial offering to the gods to assure safe passage to the afterlife. The leather had long since wasted away, but the clasp that held the purse shut had passed the test of time and was still operational when it was recovered from the site. Each of these items demonstrates a level of artistry and technical expertise unrivaled in its time. Finally, here is a Schoep's lyre, found in the king's burial chamber not far from the ceremonial sword. It reminds us that the art of poetry was as important to the Anglo-Saxons as the art of war, precisely the point that Tolkien had made just 3 years before. And for the past 70 years or so, not only have we given the Beowulf poem the attention that it deserves, but we have given it our attention for the right reason, because it is an exquisitely crafted and compelling work of literary art. That's the way in which we will look at the poem beginning with the next podcast. Take care until then.
Isn't it fascinating though?
Yeah.
They're just amazing. Okay, I know I kept your time. I'll share that we.
That means we get 10 minutes tomorrow, right?
Well, you know what, no, this is good.
20, 10 million.
I'll make it.
All right, we can bring it back down to 15.
I love that stuff. That is such good stuff. Okay, I will stop recording.